A 10-year-old boy risked his life to save a girl, trapped in a burning car. But when her wealthy family found out who he was, they didn't celebrate him. They wanted him out of the picture. The air was thick with the smell of burning rubber. 10-year-old Kamari Wade was walking home from Alcon Street, his backpack slung over one shoulder, the weight of his school books, making him lean to one side. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of orange and purple across the sky. He had walked this route 100 times before, past the old gas station with the flickering sign, past the diner where the waitresses called him baby, when he came in with his grandmother, past the stretch of road, where the streetlights were too far apart, leaving patches of darkness in between. That's when he heard it, a deep metallic groan, the kind that didn't belong, in the stillness of the evening. Then a sharp crunch like something heavy collapsing. Kamari stopped, his heart tapping a little faster. The road ahead curved around a steep hill, and beyond it, nothing but trees and silence. He took a few steps forward, then saw it, a car flipped on its side, smoke curling from the hood. Glass shimmered in the dim light, like scattered diamonds, and the front bumper was twisted against a tree. A low sputtering sound came from the engine, like it was struggling to keep breathing. Kamari froze. Should he run for help? Should he even get closer? His grandma always warned him about getting into things that weren't his business. But then he heard something else. A faint sound, barely more than a whisper. A voice. He dropped his backpack and ran. The car's front windshield was a web of cracks, but through it he could make out someone inside. A girl maybe a little older than his sister. Her head was tilted awkwardly, blood streaking the side of her face. Her lips moved, but the sound was too weak. Can you hear me? Kamari shouted, pressing his hands against the broken glass. The girl stirred slightly, a weak whimper escaping her throat. His hands were shaking, but he didn't think. He just acted. Kamari scrambled to the other side of the car, his sneakers crunching over glass and metal. He could smell the smoke thickening, turning acrid in the back of his throat. The car door was crushed in, its handle barely visible under the warped frame. He tugged at it, nothing. He planted his feet, gripping harder. Still nothing. "Come on, man," he whispered, his fingers slipping against the jagged metal. A sudden crackling noise made him whip his head up. The smoke was turning darker now, rising fast. His stomach twisted. He looked back at the girl, her eyes fluttering, barely open. He had no time. Planting his foot against the wreckage, Kamari reached through the shattered window, his small arms barely fitting through. The jagged edges scraped against his skin, but he ignored it. His fingers found fabric. Her sleeve. "I got you," he murmured. He pulled. She barely moved. "Help," he screamed, his voice cutting through the trees. But the road was empty, no headlights in sight. It was just him. Kamari adjusted his grip and yanked harder. The girl groaned, her body shifting slightly. She was wedged in. He let go, panting, his brain scrambling for something, anything. His eyes darted to the shattered windshield. Could he break it more? Could she crawl out? He snatched a loose piece of metal from the ground and slammed it against the glass. Crack. Again. Another crack. On the third hit, part of the windshield caved inward. Kamari reached through, ignoring the sting of fresh cuts on his skin. His fingers found the girl's arm again. "You gotta move," he said, his voice urgent but steady. She moaned softly. Kamari pulled with everything he had. Her body shifted. He pulled again. Her torso slid forward, and then suddenly she tumbled out. Kamari staggered back, catching her as best he could. She was heavier than he expected, her limbs limp, her breath shallow. Then, a loud hissing sound. Kamari's eyes snapped up. The smoke had turned thick black. Angry flames licked at the dashboard. Inside, the car was seconds away from going up. His arms burned from holding her up, but he forced his legs to move. One step, then another. Then he was running, dragging her with him. 10 feet, 15, 20, boom. A blast of heat slapped his back, knocking him forward. The ground rushed up to meet him, and for a second everything spun. Then silence. Kamari lifted his head. The car was on fire. Flames curled around the frame, swallowing the wreckage whole. If he had waited any longer, a sharp cough made him look down. The girl, she was alive. Barely, but alive. Kamari exhaled, his chest rising and falling, like he had just run a marathon. He heard the distant wail of sirens now, the glow of emergency lights, flickering against the trees. He looked at her face, pale, streaked with blood, barely holding on. She had no idea who he was. And in a few minutes, when the paramedics took her away, she probably never would. But something about this moment told Kamari that this wasn't the end of the story, not even close. The flashing lights of the ambulance faded into the distance, swallowed by the night. Kamari stood there for a moment, his heartbeat still hammering in his ears, the heat from the fire still tingling against his skin. He could feel the tiny cuts on his arms, where the glass had scraped him, the fabric of his shirt damp with sweat. But there was no time to think about any of that. His grandma was waiting, and if he didn't get home soon, she'd start worrying. So he did what he always did. He picked up his backpack and kept walking. The next morning, nothing felt different. The world still moved like it always had. Cars honked. Kids laughed. The smell of frying bacon from Mr. Leary's corner store wafted into the street. The sidewalk was still cracked in the same places, the same rusted chain-link fences, lining the yards of houses that had seen better days. Kamari sat at the kitchen table, chewing on a piece of toast, his legs swinging under the chair. Across from him, Grandma Bertie shuffled through a stack of bills, muttering under her breath. "You eating that toast or just holding it for decoration?" she asked, eyes never leaving the papers in her hand. Kamari took another bite. "I'm eating it." She peered at him over the top of her reading glasses. "You quiet this morning?" He shrugged. "Just tired." Bertie didn't ask any more questions. She just sighed, rubbing the back of her neck, then grabbed her purse from the counter. "I'm heading to work. Walk your sister to school. And don't let me hear about you running that mouth with them boys on the block again." Kamari nodded. He was always nodding. His older sister Tiana stomped into the kitchen with all the attitude a 12-year-old could pack into one body. "You better not slow me down today," she huffed, stuffing a notebook into her backpack. Kamari rolled his eyes but didn't argue. 10 minutes later, they were walking toward Hawthorne Elementary, the cracked sidewalk bouncing under their sneakers. The street was alive with the usual morning sounds: dogs barking, car doors slamming, music drifting from someone's open window. Kamari knew every face in the neighborhood, every shortcut, every place to avoid, and most of the time, he didn't think too much about the things that weren't his business. But that day, his mind kept drifting back to the night before, to the car, the fire, the girl. What was her name? Was she okay? He shook the thoughts away and tried to focus on the present. But something told him he hadn't seen the last of her. At school, things were the same as always. The teacher droned on about fractions. The smell of dry erase markers thick in the air. Kids passed notes. The old AC unit rattled above their heads, trying its best to keep the classroom cool. Kamari sat near the window, his fingers tapping against his desk. At lunch, he met up with his best friend, Tyrell, outside near the basketball courts. "What's wrong with you?" Tyrell asked, taking a bite of his sandwich. "Nothing. You look weird. Like, extra weird." Kamari kicked at the dirt. "You ever do something, but you don't know if you should talk about it?" Tyrell squinted at him. "Like a crime?" "No, fool." "Then what?" Kamari hesitated. He knew how things worked. If you weren't somebody, nobody cared. And he wasn't somebody. But last night, for just a few minutes, he had been. He sighed. "Forget it." Tyrell shrugged. "Suit yourself." But Kamari couldn't forget it. That night, after homework and dinner, he lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The whirring fan above him cast long, moving shadows across the walls. But he barely noticed. Somewhere across town, that girl was waking up in a hospital bed. And she had no idea who had saved her life. But that was about to change. Emma Caldwell opened her eyes to blinding white light. For a second, everything was a blur. Beeping machines, the steady hum of voices outside the door, the dull ache pulsing through her body. Her head felt heavy, her throat dry, like she hadn't spoken in days. Then she remembered the road, the rain, the sharp jolt as the car spun out of control. Her chest tightened. She shouldn't be here. She should be. Emma. She turned her head slowly and saw her mother, standing at the foot of the hospital bed, hands clasped together like she was praying in secret. "Baby, do you know where you are?" Emma swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hospital." Her mother's shoulders sagged with relief. "Oh, thank God. The doctor said you suffered a concussion. You have a broken rib. But Emma, you could have died." She didn't need the reminder. Her father, Charles Caldwell, stepped into view, stoic as ever, even now, in his tailored suit, not a strand of silver hair out of place. He looked like he had just come from a board meeting. Instead of sitting by his daughter's hospital bed. "Who saved me?" Emma asked, her voice scratchy. Her mother's brows knitted together. "A boy. Yeah. We don't know his name yet. But the paramedics said, if he hadn't pulled you out when he did, you wouldn't have made it." Emma blinked, trying to piece it together. She remembered flickers of movement, hands reaching for her, a voice telling her to move, but the memory was hazy, like a dream slipping away before she could grasp it. She wanted to thank him. "We need to find out who he is," she murmured. Her father sighed. "Emma, let's focus on your recovery." Her mother, however, didn't seem as dismissive. "I agree. We need to know who saved our daughter's life. We owe him." Charles Caldwell didn't like the word owe. Emma saw it in the way his jaw tensed. "Let's not make this a spectacle," he said evenly. Her mother ignored him. She turned toward the nurse who had just walked in. The paramedics said, "The boy left before they could get his name. But someone must know who he is." The nurse hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. Emma noticed. "You know something," she pressed. The nurse sighed. "The paramedics said the boy looked young, maybe 10, 11. They think he might be from..." Pause. Then carefully, "South Side." The room went still. Emma's mother pressed a hand to her chest. Her father's expression barely flickered, but Emma saw the shift in his eyes. South Side. That was all they needed to hear. Kamari sat at the counter of Bertie's corner store, unwrapping a pack of now and laters, when the bell over the door jingled. He didn't look up at first. The store was always busy in the afternoons, filled with people grabbing a soda or a snack on their way home. But then he heard it, that voice. "I'm looking for a boy about 10 years old. He would have been here last night." Kamari's chewing slowed. He turned, and there she was. A woman standing tall, dressed too nice for a place like this, like she didn't belong here. Kamari knew that look. He'd seen it before, on teachers who thought they were saving kids like him. She hadn't noticed him yet, scanning the store like she expected him to pop out of thin air. Bertie, standing behind the counter, did not look impressed. "We got plenty of boys that age," she said flatly, ringing up a customer's purchase. "You got a name?" "I don't," the woman admitted. "But my daughter, Emma Caldwell, was in a car accident last night. A boy saved her. We need to find him." Silence. Kamari felt Bertie's eyes on him. He kept his head down, unwrapping another piece of candy. The woman let out a breath. "Please. I just want to thank him." Bertie didn't answer right away, but Kamari already knew what she was thinking. Finally she sighed. "What do you want with him?" The woman hesitated. Kamari didn't miss it. "I told you," she said carefully. "We owe him." Bertie looked at her long and hard. Then she nodded toward the counter. "Boy you're looking for is right there." Kamari felt the air shift as the woman turned. And just like that, for the first time, Emma Caldwell's mother was looking straight at him. Kamari met her gaze, but he didn't say anything. The woman, Mrs. Caldwell, studied him for a second, her eyes flickering with something he couldn't quite name. Relief. Something else. "You're the boy who saved my daughter," she said, more like a statement than a question. Kamari just popped another piece of candy into his mouth. Bertie folded her arms. "What exactly do you want with him?" Mrs. Caldwell hesitated, smoothing a hand down her expensive-looking coat. "I just want to talk properly. I want to thank him." Bertie's eyes narrowed. "You already said that." Silence stretched between them. Kamari could tell Mrs. Caldwell wasn't used to being questioned. Finally she turned back to him. "Would you mind coming with me? Emma would like to see you." Kamari blinked. Emma. That was her name. He had wondered about her, but he wasn't sure if he actually wanted to meet her. It wasn't like he saved her for a reward or anything. But Bertie was watching him now, waiting for him to decide. So he shrugged. "Yeah, I guess." Mrs. Caldwell exhaled, relieved. "I'll drive you." Bertie's hand shot up. "Hold on. I don't know you. I don't know what you're about. Kamari's my grandson, and I'm not letting him go anywhere with just anyone." Mrs. Caldwell's expression stiffened. "I can assure you I mean him no harm. My daughter is in the hospital. I just want to give him the gratitude he deserves." Bertie didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned to Kamari. "You sure about this?" Kamari wasn't sure at all, but he nodded. Mrs. Caldwell led him outside to a sleek black SUV parked at the curb. The door clicked open without her touching it. Kamari had never been in a car like this before. The inside smelled like leather and something expensive he couldn't name. The seats swallowed him up the second he sat down. Mrs. Caldwell pulled out her phone as the driver pulled off. Kamari stared out the window. The streets of Southside blurred past. Corner stores, barbershops, kids playing in front yards with chain-link fences. The farther they drove, the more things started to change. The streets got wider, the buildings got taller. Everything looked newer. By the time they reached the hospital, Kamari felt like he had stepped into another world. Emma was propped up in her hospital bed, flipping through channels on the TV with a bored expression. When the door opened, she turned and froze. For a second, she just stared at Kamari. Then her eyes widened. "It's you." Kamari shifted, suddenly feeling awkward. He wasn't sure what he expected, but he hadn't expected this. "You remember me?" he asked. Emma nodded slowly. "Not everything, but I remember your voice. You told me to move." Mrs. Caldwell stepped aside, letting them have their moment. Emma swallowed. "They told me what happened." "How you?" she exhaled, shaking her head. "You saved my life." Kamari shrugged. "I just did what I could." Emma's eyes softened. "That's not just anything." She studied him like she was trying to figure something out. "You live on South Side, don't you?" Kamari stiffened. He knew what she meant, what everyone meant, when they said it like that. But before he could say anything, the door swung open again. Mr. Caldwell walked in, and the second he saw Kamari, his expression shifted. The air in the hospital room shifted the moment Charles Caldwell walked in. His sharp eyes locked onto Kamari, scanning him like he was an equation that didn't quite add up. The boy in front of him didn't look like someone who should have been anywhere near his daughter, let alone the reason she was still breathing. Kamari felt the weight of the man's stare, but he didn't look away. Emma was the first to speak. "Dad, this is Kamari. I know who he is." Kamari could tell by his tone that it wasn't a compliment. Mr. Caldwell stepped further into the room, his polished shoes silent against the pristine floor. He didn't reach for a handshake. "You saved my daughter's life." It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir," Kamari said, his voice even. There was a beat of silence. Then Mr. Caldwell exhaled sharply, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Well, that's fortunate." Emma's eyes narrowed. Fortunate? Her father didn't acknowledge her. Instead, he turned to his wife. "Why is the press asking about him?" Mrs. Caldwell tensed. "What?" "I just got a call from the Tribune," he said, irritation laced in his voice. "They want to run a story about the young hero who saved the Caldwell heiress." His gaze flickered back to Kamari. "I assume you didn't go looking for attention?" Kamari frowned. "No, sir." Emma sat up straighter. "So let them write it. People should know what he did." Mr. Caldwell wasn't convinced. He turned to Kamari, studying him like he was looking for an angle. "What do you want?" Kamari blinked. "Huh? What do you want in return?" It took Kamari a second to realize what he was asking. Money. That's what Mr. Caldwell thought this was about. Kamari's stomach twisted, but he kept his face blank. "I don't want nothing." Mr. Caldwell's expression didn't change. Emma looked horrified. "Dad, he's not here for a payout." Her father ignored her, still staring at Kamari like he was waiting for a lie to slip out. Then finally he sighed. "I'll handle the press." Mrs. Caldwell frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means this doesn't become a story," his voice was clipped, final. "We don't need reporters digging into things. It's better for everyone if this stays quiet." Kamari understood exactly what that meant. Mr. Caldwell didn't want the headlines to read "Poor Black Kid Saves Rich White Girl," because then people would ask questions, and men like him didn't like questions. Emma looked like she was about to argue, but her father was already pulling out his phone, sending off a text. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, already walking toward the door. "A word, please." She hesitated, then followed. The second the door closed behind them, Emma let out a sharp breath. "God," she muttered, running a hand through her hair. "I'm so sorry." Kamari just shrugged. He had already figured out how this would go. Rich people like Mr. Caldwell didn't like being in debt, especially not to kids like him. Emma sighed. "My dad's complicated. He doesn't trust people easily." Kamari wasn't stupid. That wasn't it. Her father just didn't trust people like him. But before he could say that out loud, his grandma called. He pulled out his old Nokia and pressed it to his ear. "Yeah." Bertie's voice was tight. "Come home. Now." Something was wrong. Kamari's stomach nodded. "I gotta go," he muttered, stepping back toward the door. Emma looked disappointed. "Wait, will I see you again?" Kamari hesitated, then finally he nodded once. Emma smiled. Then he was gone. The second Kamari stepped onto his street, he saw the problem: reporters. They were everywhere. Cameras, microphones, people standing outside Birdie's shop like it was a crime scene. "Hey kid, are you the one who saved Emma Caldwell?" "Kamari, how does it feel to be a hero?" "Hero." The word made his stomach turn. He pushed through the crowd, ducking into the store. The second the door shut behind him, Birdie was on him. "What did you do?" Kamari's chest tightened. "Nothing. I didn't say nothing to nobody." Birdie exhaled, rubbing her temple. "Well, somebody did. 'Cause now we got news vans camped out front, and you know what that means." Kamari swallowed. "What it means? This ain't just about you anymore." She wasn't wrong. The media loved a feel-good story. But what happened when the cameras left? When people moved on? What would happen to him? To his family? Kamari suddenly wasn't sure if saving that girl was the best or worst thing he'd ever done. For the next 2 days, Kamari couldn't leave the house without a camera in his face. People he'd never met before were calling him a hero. The news played his story like it was some kind of fairy tale. Brave young boy saves heiress from fiery wreck. Except Kamari wasn't living in a fairy tale. He was living in Southside, where the grocery stores barely stocked fresh produce, and the street lights flickered when they weren't completely busted. Where police drove slow through the neighborhood but never stopped to help. And now suddenly everyone cared. For how long though? Kamari knew the answer: not long. Emma Caldwell hadn't stopped thinking about him. Her phone buzzed constantly with texts from friends who wanted the inside scoop. Her Instagram flooded with messages from people who had never spoken to her before. But Kamari, she hadn't heard from him since the hospital. Her father had kept his word. He handled the press just like he said he would. The reporters were already moving on to the next big thing. Soon the world would forget Kamari Wade even existed. But Emma wouldn't let that happen. Kamari sat on the stoop outside Birdie's shop, head low, hoodie up. "Boy, stop sulking," Birdie muttered, sweeping the sidewalk. "You act like you got a reason to be ashamed." "I don't like all this," he grumbled. "I didn't do nothing special." Birdie stopped sweeping, looking at him hard. "You pulled a girl out of a burning car," she said. "You did what grown men might have run from." Kamari stayed quiet. She sighed. "Listen to me. The world don't decide if you're special. You do." Before he could answer, a sleek black car pulled up. Kamari already knew who it was. The door opened and Emma stepped out. Not her mom. Not a driver. Just her. She walked up to him, arms crossed against the cool breeze. "Can we talk?" Birdie smirked. "I'll be inside," she muttered, disappearing into the shop. Kamari glanced at Emma. "You're supposed to be resting." She snorted. "I've done nothing but rest." They sat in silence for a second. Then Emma reached into her pocket. "Here." She handed him a folded piece of paper. Kamari frowned. "What's this?" "My dad's lawyer wrote up a check," she muttered. "A lot of zeros. My parents think that's the only way to say thank you." Kamari's stomach turned. Emma sighed. "I told them you wouldn't take it." She wasn't wrong. Kamari didn't need their money. Money wouldn't change the way Mr. Caldwell looked at him in that hospital room. Money wouldn't stop the reporters from forgetting about him next week. "I don't want it," he muttered. Emma smiled. "I know." A beat of silence. Then she pulled out a second piece of paper. "But maybe you'll take this." Kamari raised a brow. "What is it?" "My school," Emma said. "They have a scholarship program. I asked my mom to pull some strings." Kamari stared at the paper. "Full ride. Everything is covered." He swallowed. "Why?" Emma leaned back. "Because you didn't ask for anything. And that's why you deserve something." Kamari's fingers tightened around the paper. He had never imagined something like this, not in a million years. And maybe this wouldn't change the world. Maybe tomorrow the news wouldn't care. Maybe his neighborhood would stay exactly the same. But this was something real. Kamari exhaled. Then finally he smiled. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some don't ask for the spotlight. Some don't even realize they're heroes at all. But the right people see them. And sometimes that's all that matters. If you believe in doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching, don't forget to subscribe. Stories like these deserve to be told.